All right, good morning and afternoon, everybody. We're just gonna wait a few minutes to get started. So why don't you all pop your name and where you're from in the chat, and we'll let everybody filter in.
Hey, everybody, welcome.
As said, good morning and afternoon, everyone, depending on if you're on the West Coast or the East Coast. Just letting everybody filter in, grab their coffees, grab a notepad, whatever you need to do to get set up in your space. If you'd like to pop your name and where you're from in the chat, we can all get acquainted with each other, and we will start as stated in probably just a couple minutes.
Hey, Donna, welcome.
Don, I see you're from Soyuz. It was hot last week. I hope you're doing well in the heat and you've got a couple air conditioning units going. Linda from Edmonton. Lots of Canadians this morning.
I see. Melanie, Donna, everybody's Canadian. Awesome. There's Ann, Minnesota. Hey, Ann.
All right, we'll just give it one more minute and then we'll just get started.
Hi, Susan, Rosemary, Ted, first man.
Okay, and with that, I think we'll get going. So good morning, afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Samantha Lego. I'm Keela's marketing director. We also have Mel Bilko on the back end of things today, who you might see in the chat box or answering some of your technical questions. Feel free to say hello. Her and I have been tag teaming all of our webinar series, and you may or may not have attended lately, such as March's Plugged In and our recent adaptation series. We're very lucky to have our speaker with us today, but before I introduce him, I just want to remind everybody about a couple of housekeeping rules. The first is that this session will be about an hour in length, including a 10 to 15 minute Q&A session at the end. We encourage you to ask questions in a Q&A or the chat box throughout the presentation, and we'll get to them all at the end. And while I'm sure we're all very familiar with Zoom by now, I just want to remind you that when typing into the chat, make sure that you've selected all panelists and attendees so that everybody can read your question if you'd like. All of our sessions are recorded, so you will receive this recording along with a slide deck by most likely the end of today, but in case of technical slowness, probably the end of the week. I'd also like to mention that by attending this webinar, you are eligible to receive 1 CFRE credit. You can receive more information about this in the follow-up email that we will send out afterwards. But you can always reach out to Mel at melissa.bilko, B-I-L-K-O, @keela.com. She can pop her name into the chat for you there if you'd like to record that. So yeah, just reach out to her if you'd like to learn more or receive your credit. And so with that, let's get started. So today we are very lucky to have Tony Martignetti joining us today to talk about a subject he is very familiar with. Tony has specialized in planned giving since 1997, starting as a frontline fundraiser and evolving into a consulting in 2003. He also hosts the #1 podcast for nonprofits, Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio, big nonprofit ideas for the other 95%. Today, you'll be learning all about ideating, setting up, and promoting your own planned giving program with his session titled Planned Giving, Blow Up the Black Box. Thank you so much for joining us today, Tony, and I will let you take it from here.
Thank you, Sam. We are all fundraisers, so we understand the importance of the ask, right? If you are not asking for gifts, you aren't going to get gifts. I want to share the story of my very first ask, which was in 7th grade, when I had a terrific crush on Lisa Maggio, and I chose to ask her to go steady at our 7th grade dance. We were there in the gymnasium, you know, with that high gloss varnish on the floor, poisoning everybody. I was in my powder blue leisure suit with the contrasting thread on the lapels. My shirt was a fine Kiana polyester. My shoes, blue plastic from Buster Brown. If there had been a fire, I wouldn't have burned. I would just smoke and melt. I waited till the last dance to ask Lisa to go steady. I saved my last dance for Lisa. Lisa saved her last dance for Albert Moran. So I had the pain of watching that spectacle. When it was over, I went up to Lisa in the middle of the dance floor, and I got so close, I put my hands on her shoulders, and I asked her, Lisa, would you go steady with me? With all her 7th grade charm and sweetness, she said, you are standing on my dress. Years later, Albert and Lisa married. Then sadly, they separated and divorced. I'm an attorney, and I handled that divorce. I handled it for Albert, and Lisa has been paying the price ever since. And my asks have gotten much better since 7th grade. Welcome, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be with you. Thanks so much to the team at Kila Labs for hosting us. We are going to spend time blowing up that black box of planned giving. And here's how we're going to do it. Let me move to screen share. Here's what we're talking about. What planned giving is, who the best prospects are, how to get started. I've got some marketing tips and a little continuing education, and then plenty of time for your questions. So please do be putting your questions into the chat, and we will get to them. They may be the most important part of this. My definition of planned giving, very simple. And you're going to see I keep planned giving simple throughout. This is a way of giving that your donors are paying a lot more attention to very personal factors in their lives, their long-term plan for their loved ones, their estate plan and their retirement plan. These are typically gifts that come from assets. So it's a lot different than writing a $50 check, a $50,000 check, even a $500,000 check. These are gifts typically, as I said, from assets, and there's a lot more family considerations and long-term planning that go into these kinds of gifts. And for the gifts we're going to talk about today, this is cash to your nonprofit at the donor's death. There are lots of more sophisticated planned gifts than what we're going to talk about, but we're getting a planned giving program started. I want to see planned giving programs launched. All right, today's Tuesday. So give you the rest of the week, maybe Friday or maybe Monday, you should be starting your planned giving program, okay? That's how simple not literally, but that's how simple I want to make this. So we're going to be talking about the simplest gift, and you'll see the gift by will. We're talking a lot about that. So that's a gift of cash, of course, a gift in a will when someone dies, when your donor has died. I call this get a finger, grab a hand fundraising. All these brands are notorious for getting a little something from you and then asking for a lot more. Starbucks doesn't only sell coffee, they sell food, they sell music CDs. We all know that Amazon is routinely making suggestions about other things that you might be interested in after you make a purchase. Cruises and airlines, right? You book a seat on an airline, and what's offered? Do we stop there? No. Do you want to board early? Do you want advanced Wi-Fi? Do you want to order your food early? Do you want to prepay for your bags, right? Same thing with cruises. You book a room, you get offered spa treatments, restaurant reservations, excursions, etc. You get the idea. So we're going to be working on promoting planned giving with folks who already love you. You've got their finger, they're loyal donors to you, and we're going to ask for a little more. The best prospects, who should we most likely be asking? As I said, these are people who love your work. They are inspired by your mission, by your values. And how do they show that? Because they are loyal, consistent donors through many, many years. And we're also looking for folks who are about 55 to 60 and over. That's roughly the age where people start thinking about their estate plan as a charitable vehicle, right? we think about estate planning and wills long before we're mid-50s, hopefully. But start thinking about the estate plan as a giving vehicle, roughly these ages. Okay, so that's where I like to start. And we're looking for those consistent, loyal donors. If your organization has been around 20 years, let's say, if you've got people who've been giving 8 or 10 gifts in just the past 10 years, or maybe even more, maybe 15 or 20 or 25 gifts in 15 or 20 years, right? Lots of people make small, frequent gifts, more than just once a year. These folks are your best planned giving prospects. And I don't care what the dollar amount is. If you've got somebody who's given you $10 a year, I literally mean it that low, $10 a year, and they've been doing that for 10 or 12 of the past 15 years or so, they are a very good planned giving prospect. Why? Because they're thinking about you. They think about you year after year. And I said in a lot of cases, multiple times a year. Would they like to do more? In a lot of cases they would, but there's a lot of psychosocial factors why they don't. They're mostly afraid of outliving their assets. Big fear among folks as they get older. So they might like to be doing more for you while they're living, but they can't. But they consistently think about you maybe many times a year, or at least once a year, and they've skipped very few years over a long time. Great plan giving prospects. Women, of course, women on average outlive men, so don't overlook women in philanthropy, especially related to planned giving. If it's a couple, you don't want to be ignoring women. I see that way too often, where the donor is the man and the woman is, sort of given short shrift, and that's bad practice. Consider the role of women in planned giving. It's a big role. And of course, if you're going to embark on a new program, you need to be looking to your board for leadership. I think every board member, the goal should be 100% of board members have you in their will or their estate plan somehow. We're going to be talking about gifts by will. And in that case, for the board members, I would suspend that 55 to 60 age where I like to start marketing. If you've got 20, 30, 40-year-old board members, they can put you in their will. I have 2 mandatory takeaways. And I hope this is bold enough that you get the message here. Is the message coming through loud and clear? This is not only for your wealthy donors. Big misconception. People of very modest means can include you in their estate plan. I've seen it routinely through the years that people who make very small gifts, loyally, like we were saying, consistently, as I said, have 5, 6, and even 7-figure gifts in their wills for charities. It happens routinely. This is not only for your major donors by any means. And the place to get started, as I've mentioned a couple times, charitable bequests, gift by will. If you take a look at the first letter of each bullet there, you see I spelled out Keela Labs in honor of our hosts. That's an attorney's sense of humor, so it doesn't get too much better than that. So it may be a little awkwardly worded, but we gotta give homage to our hosts, right? So Keela Labs there. So some things about charitable bequests. You may not be told. In the US, the average statistic is that for every will that you know about that you're in, there's another 7 to 8 that you're not told about. Now, of course, that applies, as the numbers get larger. When you get your very first one, I can't necessarily say there's another 7 to 8 out there. But as numbers grow, there are more gifts out there that you're not told about. And why won't people tell you? And I'm guessing it's comparable in Canada. Why won't people tell you? They don't want to be asked to do more. They like knowing that they can change their minds, even though the fact is that we can change our minds about our wills anytime, whether we tell a charity or even a family member that they're part of it or not. But if people do tell you that you're a part of their will, they take on a moral obligation not to change their minds. It's strictly a moral obligation, not legal at all. But they like knowing that they can change their minds without having to go back to you and say they've done so. So a lot of people won't tell you for that reason. Second one, easily most popular planned gift. Yes, that's why charitable bequests, these gifts by will, that's why these are the place to start. Because you name any charity in the States or in Canada, the largest ones you can think of, 75 to 80% of their planned gifts, I guarantee you, are gifts by will. For a lot of the reasons we're talking about here, I'll throw in another one. There's no lifetime cost, right? It's only paid through their estate after their death. So, like I said, name any charity, the biggest ones, the vast majority of their gifts are gifts by will. So that's the place to start. It's the low-hanging fruit. It's going to end up being 75 to 80% of your gifts, and you may not even go any further. You may not go beyond bequests. You don't have to. I have a little slide about that coming up. Expect cash, but anything of value is possible, of course. Anything that someone has that is valuable to them, could be a classic car, could be real estate, but most gifts are gifts by cash. Look back at the giving history to be amazed. That's what I was alluding to before. I've just seen it scores and scores, but probably hundreds of times, when it's a gift that we didn't know about, the person did not tell us while they were living. We get notified that they've died and we're in their will. You go look at their giving history in the CRM, and you see these very modest gifts over many, many years. Like I was saying before, it's amazing what people who are small dollar donors can do in their estates. So for that reason, always respect your small lifetime donors. I hope you're acknowledging every single gift. You need to. I know sometimes, you may say that it's more expensive to get an acknowledgement out than the value of the gift. I mean, that would have to be a pretty low-level gift. But even if that's the case, you need to thank your small dollar donors. They may be testing you. Be sure to understand the value in residual estates. So the way a will is set up, there are allowances for lots of expenses, all the expenses of death and burial, any taxes that might be due. And then there are gifts, bequests to family members, and maybe sometimes even very dear friends. Outright, we say outright. So those are specific dollar amounts. And then what's left after those expenses and after those specific dollar amount gifts is the residual. And that residual, don't be misled by the word residual. There can be the vast majority of an estate in the residual estate. I had one estate working with a college. The estate was about $3 million. The expenses and the outright bequests were in the five figures, like $50,000 or $60,000. She didn't have children. Her husband had died before her. She wasn't close with nieces. And so the 95% was in the residual, and we got a percentage of that residual. So don't think residual means pennies. It's not like that at all, not by any means. And this is so easy for your donors for some of the reasons I've already mentioned. Everybody knows what a will is. Everybody should have one. This is a very simple gift for them to do. You're referring them to their attorney to just add a simple bequest paragraph for your charity. Donors also like, as I said, that there's no lifetime cost. They don't have to tell you, although you do want to keep asking. In your promotions, you do want to ask, have you already included us in your will? Because you want to give people a chance to self-select and say they've already done it. But they don't have to tell you. And as I said, at least in the States, and again, probably comparable in Canada, there are a lot of people who won't tell you. Here's that mandatory takeaway number 2 I alluded to when I said that you don't have to go beyond bequests. You don't. You can have a very, very respectable planned giving program only ever promoting bequests. There are lots of other places you can go, more sophisticated gifts, but you don't have to. You can be very respectable, only doing what we just talked about, promoting those charitable bequests. if you decide to go further, remember you don't have to, but if you decide to go further, a couple of things here. Living trusts, that's a trust that is not set up for charitable purposes, but you could be a beneficiary of it. By the way, I'm flying through these quickly because we're talking about getting programs started, but I'll give you, just a quick overview, really quick, of some of the other possibilities. IRA rollover, that's in, I apologize. Well, no, we have folks from the US. That's in the US, people who are, but it only applies for donors who are 70 and a half and over. They can make a gift directly from their IRA. You could be a beneficiary of any kind of financial asset, anything that has a payable on death clause, like life insurance, for instance. That's the easiest example to understand. You could be a beneficiary of someone's life insurance policy. If you decide to go even further still, we can get even more complicated. Charitable gift annuities, that's a gift that pays folks income for life. Charitable remainder trusts also pay income for life. A little different setup though. Charitable remainder trust could benefit multiple charities, whereas charitable gift annuities are only for one charity. Retained life estate, that's a way of giving real estate other than by will, where the person continues living there for their lifetime. That's the retained part. And then at their death, the real estate goes to you. Charitable lead trusts, these are gifts that pay income actually to the charity. And then when the person has died or after a certain number of years, the money goes back to the family. It's used a lot of times by very wealthy people for tax planning and passing on assets to heirs. Okay, quick overview of those things, just so you know there are other gifts out there, but like the first 5 years, if you ever even go further, but I would say first 5 years, charitable bequests. Stick with those gifts by will. So far we've seen what plan giving is and who the best prospects are and how to get started, of course, the bequests. I've got some marketing tips for you and a little continuing education. And then we'll go to the Q&A. So I hope the questions are coming in. I can't see the chat right now because I'm looking at slides. Get those questions in, please. Use the chat. Get your questions because I want to answer all of them, hopefully. I want to leave plenty of time for questions. So marketing tips for events. You're already hosting an event. I'm not saying this is a planned giving event, but you're already hosting one. Put a few speaking points into the remarks and something in your program, whether it's digital or print. Now I realize there are some events that it might not be appropriate, but the default should be, let's get a couple of remarks in. And I'm talking about a few sentences. Look, we've inaugurated a plan giving program, or we've kicked off a plan giving program. Some people you might call it a bequest campaign. I've seen nonprofits do that. But either way, we've kicked off our plan giving program. We're really encouraging gifts by will. They're so simple to do. Just talk to Sam at the end of the night, and she can give you more information. That's it. It wasn't even a minute. I'm not talking about paragraphs and elaborate. No, get it in, work it into the speaking points as you're talking about what value there is to giving to your organization. Hey, we've got a new way to do it. A bequest campaign. Talk to Sam at the end. It's very simple for you to do. Just talk to Sam at the end of the night. There you go. Drop a couple sentences in. Print, if you can afford to do print. I realize print is more expensive, so you don't have to. But if you can do print, whatever communications you've got, if you've got a print newsletter, annual report, put a little piece in there. The annual report, by the way, is a great way for recognizing donors. Lots of orgs already do that already. You may acknowledge all your donors in your annual report at different giving levels. Shouldn't you be recognizing your planned giving donors as well? Certainly, I think so. Absolutely. With their consent, of course. But yeah, you should have a recognition society for your planned giving donors, just like you have recognition societies at different giving levels, dollar levels, right? Whether maybe $500 for you or $50,000 for you, depending on the size of your organization. You need a recognition society for your planned giving donors as well. And by the way, while you're thinking about that recognition society, let's stay away from the legacy circle, the heritage society. You know, so nebulous, ubiquitous. I'd much rather see, and I would encourage you to think about something iconic to your organization, something unique to you. Is it the founder's name? I've seen a bunch of organizations do the year of founding, the 1975 Society. I had worked with an organization that had a bell tower in their building. So it was the Bell Tower Society, something that your folks are going to recognize, of course. So, you know, if nobody knows who your founder is, then that's not such a good idea. But something that folks are going to recognize that's unique to your organization. Let's stay away from the legacy circle. You know, meh, blasé, not inspiring, really. For digital, of course, same thing. You know, if you have e-newsletters, sidebars, articles, I mentioned sidebars in the last slide and this one too. Sidebar, like 50 words, same as almost the same as the event mentions. We've kicked off a planned giving program. We're encouraging gifts by will. Here's what you need to know. And then, so in the print or the digital, I would give folks three key things. Your legal name, the way you're formally legally known, your tax ID number. Now, I apologize. I'm assuming in Canada, same as the States, there's a unique identifying number that your organization has. I like to see that in promotions. I like to see that in wills so that there's no question about what charity we are all talking about, okay? So your legal name, your tax ID, and your office address. Those three things. You tell folks in the sidebar, it's so easy to include us in your will. Here's the information to share with your attorney. Legal name, tax ID, address. Let us know if you'd like more information. You know, it can be that simple. And while we're talking about something simple like that, sidebar, let's make sure that we know we're not talking to donors about their deaths. This is not a death conversation. This is a conversation about the value of long-term gifts to your work, to your mission, to your values, the long-term sustainability of your organization. These gifts are natural extensions of the giving that the folks you're talking to, based on what we talked about, ideal prospects, are already doing. It's an extension of their giving, their lifetime giving. They love you that much because of their giving consistency and loyalty that they'd like to do more perhaps. And that's what you're inviting them to do. So that's what this conversation is about. You're not talking about deaths. You're talking about the long-term sustainability of your mission, your values for decades and generations to come. The importance of your work continuing. That's what this conversation is about. There was a question before today that came in about, you talked about this over a phone or in person. Depends on how well you know the person. I would say phone is probably not a great way of broaching this subject. Mail certainly can be, or email. You know, now I happen to prefer print mail, devoted to planned giving, of course. You know, one message, not something, you know, where it's an afterthought in some other solicitation or some other piece. I mean, you could drop a little buck slip in about planned giving. That's different in other mailings. I think that's coming up on a slide. But if you're doing direct mail, print mail, I like to see it devoted to planned giving. And that's a perfect time to make the solicitation. You know, it's important to have your estate properly planned. Here's the value to our organization for these long-term gifts. And then they ask, would you consider including, or please consider including us in your will? Now, it's not going to necessarily come that time. You know, the first time you send this direct mail, you're not going to get 50 gifts. It's not going to work like that. It's like any other marketing, right? It has to be dripped along. It takes time, but you're exposing people to the idea that they can include you in their will. There's a good chance that other charities are asking them. You want to be asking too. You want them to be thinking, you want your donors to be thinking about you when they are revising their will. Unfortunately, might be doing their first will. They're updating for some reason. You want them to be thinking of your organization. So that was a little bit of a digression, but important. So marketing, so sidebars, e-newsletter, simple page on your website. Don't go in for these calculators. You don't need these in this stage. There are companies that will sell you calculator pages, you know, and you roll over to theirs. And of course it's branded to look like yours. Fancy calculators. How much will I make from my charitable gift annuity? And you don't even need to know, you don't know that. You don't need that stuff. You're not talking about those. You're talking about gifts by will. So a simple page, maybe 2 pages. If you got a testimonial from someone who's done this, a board member would be ideal. They've included you in their will. A couple sentences about why they did it with the picture, a picture of them. And the value, again, the value of these gifts to the long-term sustainability of your mission and your values. You could drop something in an email signature. You can include us in your will, ask me how, you know, really simple. We're not spending a lot of money here. It's not necessary. You don't have to spend a lot of money to be successful in planned giving, right? Another black box problem. Oh, it's costly. And we need an expert. We need experts. We need an expert on the board. Or we need an attorney on the board. That's nonsense. I used to be an attorney. I guess I'm branded for life, an attorney, but I don't practice law, but maybe I'm branded. But so I either am an attorney or I used to be an attorney. And I'm probably the only one who will tell you, you don't need an attorney. It's not necessary. So let's dispel these myths, break through this black box nonsense. Remember the reason, the key reason that you're focusing on gifts by will. They are the overwhelming majority of any planned giving program. 75 to 80% of all the gifts in any program are gifts by will. Here's direct mail, not devoted. So this is not devoted to planned giving. So here's where I say, you could drop a buck slip in some existing package that you have. It's a little, it's a third of a page. You print 3 on a page, drop a 1/3 in, so it's not increasing your postage costs. And it could be as simple as those sidebars I mentioned. We've kicked off a planned giving program. It's so easy to include, or you don't even have to call it planned giving program. Like I said, Will's campaign. We're encouraging gifts by will. You don't have to use the phrase planned giving. I mean, you can, it's not necessary. We're encouraging gifts by will. It's so easy for you to include us. Here's our legal name, tax ID, and address. Please share this information with your attorney. Feel free to give us a call if you need any more information. And if there's more information that's needed, you don't have to have the technical expertise. You're always going to be directing the person back to their attorney to prepare the will. You don't need to have an attorney who's writing wills for you that you're included in. That also gets into conflicts of interest. You got to watch out to these attorneys. Pay attention. You remember what I did to Lisa Maggio. You don't cross attorneys. So you don't want to get mixed up with these folks. It's not, I'm joking obviously, but it's not necessary. You just don't have to have that expertise. You're referring your donors back to their attorneys for not how to do this, but to do it, right? The conversation you're having with your donors is what the gift is going to mean to your organization. Use your reply envelope flap. Yeah, so when you're when you're printing your envelopes, you can have a little checkoff on the back of the flap, right? So this is envelopes for any purpose. Little going to donors, of course. Little checkoff on the back flap. Send me information about including your organization name in my will. A little checkoff that they mark when they're sending the envelope back, right? So these are in your reply envelopes. Self-selection check off. Oh my. Oh, that's egregious. Look at that spelling error. Check of. That's very bad. Very bad. I would flag that in the I would flag that in the feedback. When you're going to get an email, I'll talk about that shortly. But you're going to get an email encouraging you to give Keela feedback. I would flag this spelling error. That's egregious. Check of. Okay, so here's what we've covered. I got a little continuing education. Then we're going to have even extra time for questions because I suspect there's going to be a lot. It's a large group, good sized group, and plus a couple of questions came in advance. So I know there's going to be questions out there. So we'll have time to cover them. Here's the little continuing ed. If you want to know more about planned giving. Oh, first, here's where, here's where I encourage you to let me know what you thought. So Keela is going to send you an email later today, and it's not going to say, let Adam know what you thought. That was one that Sam sent me as a sample. So it'll say, let Tony know what you thought. So I made the correction there for you. So please let me know. Your feedback is really valuable to me. I'm very, very interested. Remember to flag that spelling error, but let me know what you thought. Sam said very few people fill these out. We got to turn that around. We need like 100%. We need 100% return on these. If you're doing it for no other reason, then I'd ask you to do it as a favor to me. Let me know, because I'm very interested. But let Keela know too. So you'll get that email later today. Let me know what you thought. And then here's some continuing education, multimedia version. So if you're interested in a PDF that I wrote, this free how-to guide, Unleash the Game-Changing Power of Planned Giving at Your Nonprofit. Very simple. You can do it right now. You can text guide to 56525. Send a text. You'll get you'll be sent to the download page, and you'll get that free how-to guide. It goes into a little more detail on some things. It's free. It's there to help you. So easy to get. You can take care of that right now if you want. If you want to even deeper, like the deepest dive, I have a membership community called Planned Giving Accelerator. It's a brain dump. I'm going to teach you everything I know about how to start your planned giving program. We'll have live training sessions. I'll also have exclusive, just for members, podcasts, webinars, small group Ask Me Anything sessions. There is a Facebook community just for members. So if you want the deepest dive, you could look at Planned Giving Accelerator, plannedgivingaccelerator.com. The first class will be starting October 1st. If you're a reader, if you want, so again, multimedia. So if you like print books, I don't think this one is available digitally. Planned Giving Simplified, Robert Sharp Sr. It's a really good book. I recommend it all the time. He also uses simple language, but he goes further than I do. He covers all those gifts and some others that I went through pretty quickly. So if you're interested in a book, if you like reading books, Planned Giving Simplified by Robert Sharp Sr. And I host a podcast, Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio. We've got over 13,000 listeners each week in small and mid-sized shops. That's who I tailor it for. That's who all my work is for, small and mid-sized nonprofits. You could check out Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio. It goes way beyond planned giving, way beyond just fundraising. We talk about social media, technology, branding, board relations, volunteer management, program management, everything that I think small and mid-sized shops struggle with. I'm ready for questions, Sam. Do I need to stop my sharing?
You can stop your sharing and I'll put mine on. All right. Thanks so much, Tony. That was great. I mean, I learned a lot. I didn't know a whole lot about planned giving, and now I feel like I'm an expert. But we have a few questions that you can run through if you'd like. The first one is from Doug. How do you recommend opening a conversation with a supporter to lead into an ask regarding a planned gift?
Doug, thanks a lot. Do we know where Doug is at? Or we don't know? Where Doug is from? No? Okay. Well, in the meantime, Doug, yeah, as I said, this is a natural extension of the giving that your donors are already doing, right? Because you're gonna qualify, you're gonna be talking to the right prospects. So how do you open the conversation? I think a great hook is we've kicked off a wills campaign. We're encouraging gifts by will. You've been such a loyal supporter for so many years. You know, it's clear how much you love our work. Is that something you would consider? Would you think about putting us in your will? It's that simple, all right? Remember what you're not talking about. The donor's death. Absolutely, it's not necessary. That's not what this subject is about. As you start to build up some gifts, then you could say something like, you know, lots of people we've kicked off this program and lots of others are doing it. You know, lots of loyal donors just like you have included us in your will. Is that something you'd consider? There you go.
And just to follow up, Doug is from Ontario.
Thank you, Doug. Ontario, thank you. I'm in Ontario. Sounds great. Oh, okay.
All right, our next question is from Robert. I have an individual who gives us around 2,000 to 6,000 per year and has been giving over the past 10 years plus. She is 85 plus. How do you suggest transitioning the conversation to bequests?
The same way I just described for Doug. So she's been a loyal supporter for so many years. We've kicked off a wills campaign. Would you consider including us in your will? Is that something you would think about? I didn't make this explicit. When folks are 55 to 60 and over, and in that case, I think the woman is 86, they're not embarrassed by these conversations. They're already thinking about their own mortality and their long-term planning. If I say they're waiting for you to ask, that doesn't mean they're pining to be asked the question, to solicit. I'm not saying that, but they're ready for it. They're open to the topic. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be afraid. You don't have to be humble about it. I'm sorry to have to ask about this, but we kicked off this wills campaign. That's not going to get much. That's not going to get much traction. Don't ask humbly. Ask confidently. Again, it's a natural extension from the giving that they're already doing because you're talking to your most loyal donors. So that the woman who's 86 years old and has been giving at that dollar level for so many years, she's a very, very good prospect for a gift by will. Guarantee that she's going to say yes? Of course not. But you're talking to the right kind of person. She's a very, very good prospect.
Thank you for your question, Robert. Robert's from Pittsburgh, apparently your undergrad college town.
Yes, I did. Yes, I went to Carnegie Mellon. I love Pittsburgh.
The next one comes from an anonymous attendee. What do you value most about your involvement in plan giving?
Oh, cool. That sounds like it's my father. he doesn't know how to use Zoom. He's also, actually, he is 86. He is 86. So yeah, so he's not on Zoom. So it's not a seed. I didn't plant my father in the audience. Yeah, it's probably that's really touching. Why are you anonymous? I want to shout you out. Anonymous, that's a really touching question. It's probably what I miss most about doing consulting, which is the relationships. I'm not joking. I'm getting a little teary. I think about and most of them are women, because when you get into 80s and 90s, that's mostly the largest proportion of 80 and 90-year-olds are women. The relationships, the stories they tell, how thoughtful they are, handwritten notes, which I always reciprocate, and I don't just wait for people. By the way, handwritten notes, very good for planned giving. You're talking to 70, 80, 90-year-olds. They grew up with handwriting, handwritten notes. And I'm not talking about filling an 8.5 by 11 sheet with your handwriting. No, get a little note card. Look, I got some samples here, right? Oh my God. I got this sample of a card I got from a woman. I don't want to show her name. That wouldn't be fair, but look, like December 2019, I saved it. See, look, dear Tony. I mean, it's so sweet what they say. A lot of times they'll write back to you and thank you for writing to them. And then you've got this correspondence. You got to meet your donors where they are, right? You always hear that in nonprofit technology conferences. You got to meet them where they are, whatever social channel. Well, suppose their channel is print and it's handwritten. You got to meet them there. And it's touching. So you do little cards, notes. I'm not talking about, like I said, big sheets of paper filled with handwriting. No, get little note card stationery, little cards like she sent. A sweet little card like that. right? Expressions by Hallmark. How simple can it be? That's the little notes you send, okay? So handwritten notes. I don't know, game changing? Maybe in some relationships, yes. But so what do I miss? I digress a lot, but I always come back. You trust me to come back. What do I miss? Yeah, the relationships. The people are touching, the stories they tell, World War II, some even going back further, Great Depression. Yeah, they've seen a lot, and they have a lot of stories, and some of them are a little lonely too. So you can be something of a, a professional friend. You can't go too far with that. You have to still as a professional relationship, but you can definitely be that kind of a friend to them, and that's the most touching part of Plan Giving. Why are you anonymous?
Touching answer.
You should be shouting your name out for that touching question. Okay, what's next?
The next one is from Sandra. Do you have any suggestions about the conversation when we work with a health charity where young and middle-aged people are dying before they turn 53?
Yeah, well, that's an exception to the general rule I was describing. If you've got, excuse me a sec, Sandra. If you have donors who are dying at younger ages and they are the kinds of loyal donors that I talked about, then I would, it sounds to me like it's appropriate to be talking to them at much younger ages. Look, the reason I don't suggest doing it at younger ages, and this does relate to the question too, Sandra, is because I'm not convinced that your charity is going to remain in a younger person's will until their death. I've seen the research that says talk to people in their 30s. They want to know about planned giving. I've seen all that. And maybe when your program is more mature and you're, I don't know, 8 or 10 years out, sure, talk to people in their 30s and 40s. My concern is that, is your charity going to remain in their will for 70 years, 50, 60, 70 years until their deaths? That's quite a stewardship lift. I had a guest on Nonprofit Radio once say, well, I posed that question and he said, well, it just becomes a matter of stewardship. 70 years of stewardship is an awful long time. That's a long time to be stewarding someone. Their interests, and okay, so let's say you can do it. You can, through all the iterations of your staff, you can keep them engaged for 70 years, or okay, I won't go to that extreme, 50 years. On the individual side, our interests change. The charities that are of interest to me now are not the same ones that were of interest to me 30 years ago when I was 28. So that's my concern. I'd rather you focus on donors at the outset, and I'm saying like 8 to 10 years is the outset for this purpose, who are very, very unlikely to change their interests and remove you from their will. Okay, so that's the reason that I say start 55 to 60. I mean, plus, as I said, that's roughly the age people start thinking about their estate plan as a charitable vehicle in larger numbers, right? So start with the people who are most likely and most ready to have this conversation. Hope that helps, Sandra.
Great, thank you. This question is a two-part question from Edith, and she's the lady who emailed into us, so thank you. How do you suggest a gift amount, and how do you know the amount to ask for? And then should this be done on the phone, in person, with a friend along? What would you suggest?
Right, and I did talk about the phone versus, how to talk to the person. Phone being the I think last alternative. Gift amount, no, unless you've solicited them for some kind of a campaign gift or specific gift, you've got them in mind for. I try to pick something that's everybody could appreciate. So let's say a $50,000 ask. You might say, would you put an additional $25,000 in your will, or an additional $10,000 in your will? That's really the only time I'm asking for gift amounts. We're not talking, all the marketing you heard me talk about, I didn't say anything about gift amounts. We're just asking, would you include us in your will? Or please consider including us in your will. Is it something you would consider doing? I don't even ask gift amount in a lot of cases after they've told us that they've done it. Now, some cases you do. You might be in a campaign and you want to give some, well, not for campaign recognition, but you want to, you need to count the number of gifts, and I mean, not for dollar amount recognition. That's what I mean. But you might have, like, I have a client that has a matching gift, you know, for every gift by will over a certain amount, they'll make a matching gift. So in a circumstance like that, then you would need to know what the dollar amount is. But a lot of people are still not going to tell you. You know, my default is to not ask. Certainly not ask for a dollar amount, unless, like I said, it's part of a larger ask. But I don't subscribe to asking for a specific amount in a will. You're just trying to get someone to include you at whatever level they're comfortable with, unless you have some other purpose, like a campaign, like I said. And then did I miss a part of Edith's question? I'm not too good on multiple parts because I forget the second part after I answer the first.
It's all right, you always come back to it. So Should this be done over the phone, which you kind of discussed, in person with a friend along?
No, I don't think friend, you know, unless, you know, I guess if it's some kind of a bigger ask, like I said, again, a campaign ask, and maybe you're talking to a major donor or a board member, that's a different kind of an ask. I'm talking about your more general population of prospects.
I think this question kind of segues into that. So this is from Nicole. What's literally the next step if someone replies, yes, I'm interested in planned giving, in a conversation? How do you take that further?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for considering including us. That's a big step, and we're grateful, and it's going to mean a lot to us. The best thing that you can do is talk to your attorney. I can give you some information. That's the legal name, tax ID, and our address for you to share with your attorney. And I'd be grateful if you let us know after you've actually done it, because we'd like to be able to thank you. Even, you know, thank you more formally. But at this stage, you're thanking them for saying, yes, I would do it, or I would consider doing it. Think about what you just asked them to do. You asked them to put you alongside their husband, wife, children, grandchildren in their will. That's a pretty exalted place, really. I don't know, is exalted too extreme? That's a pretty revered place for them to hold you right alongside their spouse, children, and grandchildren. So my first reaction would be, thank you very much. And then I can follow up with some information for you to share with your attorney.
Thanking the donor is so important at every step of the journey. So that's great advice.
Yeah. And down the road too. That's why you have a recognition society. So you're always thinking about how to thank your donors.
The next question actually is from Robert again. We plan on creating a planned giving society. Would you recommend this?
Robert, one question per person. No, we're skipping him. No, we're not answering his question. Yes, Robert, of course. Recognition society. Don't call it the Heritage Circle or the Legacy Fund, please. Something iconic and unique to your organization. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely do it.
The next one is from another anonymous attendee. So for a student, what would you tell yourself when you first started? Or what advice do you have for an aspiring fundraiser?
How do we know it's not the same anonymous person asking a second question? We don't know that.
Could be both.
It's
forever a secret.
It could be a conspiracy. If we get a third anonymous question, we're not taking it. Okay, so what would I say to a student who's interested in fundraising? Or did she say planned giving? He or she say planned giving specifically?
I think they said fundraising specifically, and talking to your past self.
I would say welcome. You know, it's the relationships. It's a relationship business. It's not a financial planning business. To me, it's not a money business. Yes, we're raising money, but to me, it's a relationship business. I like people. I like having relationships with people. Welcome. You're making the right choice. What are you waiting for? No, join us. What are you waiting for? Go ahead, Sam.
All right. The next question is from Angel. What are the best practices to beginning a conversation with a donor who gives to you regularly, but you may not know personally?
You may not know personally. Well, then I would include them in all the marketing methods that I recommended. So digital, direct mail. If you don't know them personally, then you don't want to be talking to them about giving to you in their will personally. So they're part of a larger prospect pool. Treat them the same as you do all the other marketing. Can you get to know them? Is there an opportunity? When we get back to in-person events, can you invite them to an event and make sure they're on your list of people that you want to talk to that night? That's a strategy. But until then, yeah, if you don't know them well enough to have the conversation personally, then it'll be off-putting in that case. So they're part of your larger prospect pool. Thanks, Angel.
I actually have a second question from Angel, which I'll read out now as well. She works for an organization that treats people living with HIV and AIDS as well as Hep C. Is it insensitive or inappropriate to consider asking for bequests given the circumstances?
No, I don't think so. If they love your work, if they're already giving to you, remember, when we're not acquiring new donors through planned giving, that's not a myth. I don't think people think that. Just making it explicit. So if they're already supporting you, then a planned giving ask, again, is a natural extension to their giving. They love your work, your mission, your values. They're already supporting it. Would they consider including you in their will?
The next question that I have is from Dave Clark. In your experience, do donors while they are still living give annual contribution? Oh, sorry. Do donors' annual contributions change once they have agreed to a gift by will while they are still living?
Dave Clark 5. I love that band. Yes, it increases, Dave. There's, I've seen it, of course, not 100%. Not all planned gift donors, once they've included you in their will, increase their other forms of support, whatever it might be, major, periodic, annual, but a lot do. And why is that? They feel closer to your organization. Again, where are you now? You're alongside their husband, wife, children, and grandchildren. They feel that much closer to you. I've seen it routinely. Gifts rise after a planned gift commitment. And it's not only me, you could say, well, what is he? Anecdotal. Although I think 23 years of anecdotes has some value to it. But you could say, no, you can write him off 23 years. There's also research. Professor Russell James at Texas Tech University has research that shows annual, I don't know if he restricted it to annual giving, but let's just say giving generally increased something like 45% among this cohort of planned giving donors that he studied. Dave Clark 5.
Dave Clark 5. The next question, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your name. Faro has a great question. We have a donor with a bequest gift for our organization. Every time we connect with him for various reasons, he says, if you're checking, I'm dead, I'm still alive. While he might be saying it jokingly, how do you handle your relationship with your bequest donors? He's joking. You thank them routinely. You treat them as insiders, right? So these are people who they've told you that you're in their will. You treat them as insiders. So do you have inside communications that you share with your major donors? Can you share it with your planned giving donors? I'm the evangelist for planned giving. I would say you can. You have events. Do you have a VIP reception before the events for major donors? Why aren't your planned giving donors invited? When we go back to in-person events or virtual too. You have a VIP section, some kind of an event, virtual or in-person. How come your planned giving donors aren't invited? Be the spokesperson. You can be an evangelist too for planned giving. I'm the evangelist. You can't be the evangelist. You can be an evangelist. You're welcome to just keep the pronouns. Is that a pronoun? No, it's an article. Keep the articles straight. You can be an evangelist for planned giving. Welcome. You can't be the. So evangelize for planned giving. Always be advocating for it at your organization. I don't know, something special coming up. Can we include the planned giving donors? Can we invite them? It doesn't matter whether they come. It's the same as inviting folks to anything, right? Even if they don't come, they appreciate the invitation. That's how you treat your planned giving donors. I see Josh says, Josh is shouting himself out as the anonymous attendee. All right, Josh, thank you. You asked some touching questions. Josh. All right. Oh, from Philly. Oh, I went to law school at Temple. You got both sides of Pennsylvania represented. Philadelphia on the east and Pittsburgh in the west. I'm sorry, Sam. No, it's totally fine. We have one more question left for the evangelists of Plan Giving. This one's from Ted. What would your advice be for the best way to reach out to a community at large rather than an appeal to our existing donors? We've already got that covered.
Don't do it. Community at large, they're not supporting you. They're not current donors of the loyalty at the level of loyalty that we've been talking about. It's a mistake. They're not going to do it. You don't talk to strangers about their wills. No. Now you make me, who asked that question? Now you make me end on a negative. This is a bummer now. Don't do it, he says. That's the end? Oh, man. I wish I had something. All right. There you go. I guess don't do it, sir.
Dave,
you know, the do nots are important too. Don't do those. Yeah.
Dave Clark 5 says, thank you for all of the great insights.
DC5, you're welcome. DC, you're welcome. Remember, everybody, please let Tony know what you thought. Keela wants more than 5 responses. We got to blow that away. We want 100% response. Please, the email's going out this afternoon. Sorry if I stole some of your info, Sam.
It's totally fair. Blow up the black blocks and blow up our Typeform survey, please.
Yeah.
So with that, I will start closing it out. Thank you, everyone. Tony, you've left a smile on, I'm sure, everybody's faces this morning, cool. Including mine.
Cheers.
Before we sign off here, I just want to remind you, that's why you're so chirpy. It's great. Yeah.
Straight up gin.
Before we sign off here, I just want to remind you that our next webinar will be on Tuesday, August 25th at 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. EST. The session will be led by Chad Barger, who is the chief strategist and owner of the firm Productive Fundraising. He'll be presenting his webinar titled How to Get Your Board to Fundraise. If you haven't already registered for that, we posted the link in the comment section to sign up. And again, just as a reminder, by attending today's session with Tony, you are eligible to receive 1 CFRE credit. So again, look for that additional information in the follow-up email. We promise we will send it. Lastly, I just want to remind everyone today that the session was recorded, so you'll be receiving the recording along with Tony's slide deck by the end of the week, if not by the end of today. Thank you so much again for attending, and we will see you at the next webinar. Tony, I will let you say a final word.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining. I hope it was valuable. So glad to have you with us. Thanks.
Have a great day.